All right, we are live. So with this live stream, we're going to be diving into two articles about how juniors are doomed, and similar discussion. But we're going to go ahead and jump into a little bit of a shorter article that seems to be short and sweet, and then we have a much longer article by Steve to follow up with. But we're going to start with Kuberdenis. Let me go ahead and toss this in chat. And we're just going to jump into it. All right. You're cooked? I don't know, Rod. We'll have to see. What's up, Renee? How you doing? All right. I'm just going to dive into it, and then we could chat about it a little bit. But I think the second one's going to be pretty long, so buckle up. All right. Juniors are doomed, and this is good. LLM's hype, co-pilots, and the turning point by Kuberdenis. And afterwards, I'll go ahead and link these articles in the description below. So, TLDR, get good or quit tech. All right. I like it. Junior engineering is hard. A junior engineer is a person who is just starting in tech, be it front-end, back-end, or operations. It is a person just starting out. How can you distinguish a junior engineer from a mid-level or senior? Quite easy, actually. Here are the top 5 signs to catch a junior. Highly intensive desire to talk about tech. Okay, fair. Irresistible. Well, no. Have you met... I'm not going to call people out. No, that's not true at all. Irresistible need to express an opinion. No. I think I'm thinking of like dev content creators. This is not fair. Constant questions that could be Googled. Yes. Stop it. Aggressive display of superiority over non-tech acquaintances. Is this a thing among junior developers? Is that a thing? Do you feel like, I'm not even judging. Do you feel like a superiority, like when you go to like a family event, holiday? Do you have that feeling? I'm actually not even judging. I'm curious if this is a thing, because you're damn right that I do. And then it backfires because then they want me to fix everything: their printer, their phone, their sound system that's hooked up to their phone to play country, which I absolutely hate. So karma is real. But I'm just wondering if other people actually feel this thing, feel like a superiority, even if it's just like minor. Constant loud, and I don't actually feel that way. I'm just joking. Constant loud, never-ending, ear-numbing, complete and utter yapping. What? Why are you so bitter? What do you mean? Well, yapping? Okay. I thought this was going to be a serious article. We are not being serious in this article. Ah, yes, the junior engineer, an alpha specimen indeed. But what exactly are junior engineers doing in their daily work life? Well, this has been a hot topic since I have been in tech. Let's explore more by looking deeper into 3 categories: front-end, back-end, and operations. Okay, I just want to read this. I'm a senior DevOps engineer by day. Okay. Front-end, requirements for a junior front-end engineer role: HTML, CSS proficiency in HTML5 and CSS, understanding of web standards and responsive design principles, JavaScript, React, Vue, or Angular, version control, web performance, cross-browser compatibility, debugging, API integration, build tools, Webpack, NPM, or Yarn. It's a shame that Vite hasn't taken off professionally as much, you know? I think so far this is very serious as a mid-level developer. Okay, all right. But what? What about... Okay, explain this to me. Constant, loud, never-ending, ear-numbing, complete, and utter yapping. Those are a lot of words to describe a junior developer that pretty much all say the same thing. Explain this to me. Junior developers, I don't think they talk that much. Again, maybe I'm thinking of content creators. I was exactly like that. Oh my God. All right, never mind. We're just gonna keep going. So you need to know HTML and CSS. You need to know JavaScript. You need to know your way around a library like React, Get, SEO, page speed insights, and this is another thing I think a lot of people underestimate, right? Just accessibility. And we went over this a little bit, but you can use Chrome's insights. But even just minimizing your images, right? Like React's a fairly heavy library. And you're not going to have to deal with like code splitting as a junior developer for your personal project. That's ridiculous. But, doing things that don't take that much effort, like figuring out how to upload your images to a CDN eventually, and just minimizing them, running them through like something like tiny PNG, tiny JPEG or JPG or something like that, and just minifying that, you're going to notice the images look almost exactly the same. And speed is truly what matters in keeping that user there and delivering those assets as quickly as possible. And a lot of junior developers underestimate that. And it doesn't, I don't think there's a steep learning curve with that kind of stuff. You probably want to fit that to the tail end of your learning and growing as a junior developer. But still, like SEO and page speed stuff matters. Tailwind, oh God, no, you don't have to learn Tailwind. Bootstrap, no, you don't have to learn Bootstrap. Flexbox, yes, you need to learn Flexbox. Grid, yes, you need to learn Grid. Again, with these, look at your local area. If you see job postings with it, go ahead and apply. Or not apply. Like if you want to bring these into your project and you want to utilize this type of CSS library, that's fine. Just make sure there are jobs that are looking for this kind of stuff. Because other than that, I see a lot of junior developers just not getting really comfortable with CSS and not really diving deep, and they just kind of settle on their frustrations and say, you know what, screw CSS, I'm going to pick up a library. It's going to make my life easier, and they never really learn CSS. As a front-end developer, learn it. What's up, everyone? How you doing? All right, be able to write unit tests, REST, cores, data transformation, builders. Yep. Yeah, I agree with all that. Often, and a lot of people think you need to learn GraphQL. I don't think it's that difficult to utilize GraphQL from the front end. As a junior developer, you're probably not going to be diving into the GraphQL layer. So REST is the way to go. Often you will also be required to understand UI, UX principles. You will need to participate in Scrum and Agile rituals. Like how? Okay, never mind. You will also find yourself bashing your head against technologies like Docker. Maybe be required, be required to at least once troubleshoot a CI/CD pipeline and GitHub Actions. Eventually, sure, DevOps or GitLab, and worst of all, experience the absolute horror of rebase and merge. I mean, yeah, I don't think you need to rebase anything until you become a professional developer. What do you guys think about that? What's up, Mel? What's up, Dylan? What's up, Rod? What's up, Gandalf? Forgot to give my shout outs. What do you think about that? I don't think you need to rebase anything and learn what rebase even does until you become a professional developer. You're not rebasing your personal projects. I don't think that's necessary. You can. I don't think it's necessary. All of this, well, nobody takes you seriously because you are only doing front end. Well, backend developers don't take you seriously. I think this is a self-report. DevOps doesn't take you seriously. Front-end developers are very well respected. If you're a good front-end developer, right? You are well respected as a good junior front-end developer when you care about your craft. Takeaway, being a front-end sucks. I don't think it sucks that much either. Is this just like a front-end developer survivor? Was this guy just front-end for like years and just worked for a company where he just every day, the back-end team just bullied him and like pulled his underpants up and pulled it on top of his head? Or like, what did your team do to you when you were a front-end developer? Or are you the bully? Are you the person that like gave all these front-end developers this much shit? I have never heard of this. What? I don't think front end sucks that much. I just don't. This has not been my experience at all. Maybe at least to my face. Maybe there were whispers in the back. I don't know. I just don't hear this from other front end developers. I think you're working at the wrong companies if you're dealing with that crap. Requirements for a junior backend engineer role. Programming languages. Proficiency in one or more backend programming languages such as Python, Java, Ruby, Node, or PHP. Or C#. Database management, understanding of relational databases, MySQL, Postgres, and non-relational. I think building two projects. If you're going to be focusing on API work, I think getting exposure to working with a relational database and a non-relational database is going to make you more marketable. I think that's worth your time. Experience in designing and developing RESTful APIs and or graph APIs, version control, server management, networking. I wonder how deep that goes. Probably not that much. ORM frameworks, yes. SQL Alchemy, Hibernate, Django ORM, or something like SQLize for Node. And I know the JavaScript world. Nest, man, I really want to see Nest take off. Nest looks really promising. Not Next. All right? Nest. N-E-S-T. It has a cat on the page. Security. Basic understanding of security principles. Yep. Testing, familiarity, and with backend testing frameworks and tools such as JUnit, PyTest, or Mocha. Basic knowledge of containerization tools like Docker. Very true. Surprised he didn't mention anything about any sort of cloud hosting like AWS. Maybe I missed it. Again, you need to know a programming language. You need to be slightly proficient in SQL and no SQL. You need to understand to be able to apply the concept of caching. You need to understand the difference between REST and GraphQL. Git, ORMs, what even is this? ORMs? What is an ORM? Security, testing, Docker, Kuberdenis, Packer, and so on. This is DevOps world, man. Do you really need to be... I wonder. So DevOps is a very wide-reaching profession. DevOps is kind of like a jack of all trades and truly helps out the back-end engineering team quite a bit and automates a lot. I'm wondering... Let me keep going. Being a back-end at least comes with bragging rights. You can also lie to your friends that you are a hacker. What? No. No, your friend should unfriend you if you ever do that. That is so that like there are certain things that you can do as a developer that will make people cringe so much that they should actually stop being your friend. And I think that is one of them. Takeaway, being a backend still sucks, but has its perks. Why does this guy hate front end so much? Damn. Operations. Opinion too long, too lazy to explain. I'm not. No, in short, operations guys are cool. Always have been, always will be. We went over the rules. Now the question is, will there be junior engineers in the future? No. Let me elaborate. All right. Evolution, dummy. Okay. I just don't know how seriously to take this article. What do you guys think? Junior engineering hasn't always been like this. A few years ago, you would have done perfectly fine with just a programming language and a library. What changed? Evolution happened, dummy. As with any other area of our lives, we evolved. A top performer will always inspire. Top performers through the years pushed harder and harder and left a mark with every push. We got inspired and we tried to mirror their behavior, their achievements, and their success. Some of us could, others couldn't, but regardless of the outcome for each of us, we all collectively became better. We entered a new normal of knowing more, raising expectations, and accelerating our field. Sure, there has been a few cracks in the transmission, like the mass layoffs after COVID, but ultimately... You describe the mass layoffs as a few cracks in the transmission. Are you serious? I feel like that's a pretty big contributor to the current market. I see the push of the new normal of raising expectations. I'm just reading what he's saying. A few cracks in the transmission, like the mass layoffs after COVID. That is the biggest contributor to why. No, hold on. Let me take that back. There are two very large contributors. And the mass layoffs have had to happen for this to be a thing, right? So mass layoffs happened, but when they weren't happening in 2021 to 2022, companies were overhiring significantly, causing people to want to transition. And a lot of people questioned their current career, their current job, and where that was going when COVID happened. And so a lot of people decided they want to better their life, and their jobs weren't taken that seriously with COVID. And just there's a lot of moving parts there. But ultimately, people decided, hey, I hear tech is more secure. I want to go into tech. I want to better my life, which that alone is great. But the golden years of 2021, late 2021 to 2022, maybe like mid 2021, that lasted a very short duration, and you had a lot of people going through programs and diving into CS degrees or finishing up their CS degrees, going through coding boot camps, going through the self-taught path. You had a lot of people that were really excited to transition because companies were desperate to hire. And then the mass layoffs happened, and then you had all these people that were transitioning into tech, and then there are very few jobs available for them. It's not just at the career itself, the jobs themselves, the expectations just rose because we're producing a bunch of really good software engineers that are moving the industry forward. No, it's because companies now have their pickings and they can choose really, really good engineers for the same salary. And I feel like this is like one of the weakest, worst parts of this article, most like disingenuous parts of this article. Like, this is huge in affecting the market. Should you be scared? It depends. Ain't no rest for the junior. There will not be junior engineers as the ones we are used to observing and meeting around us today. The junior engineers of the future will be all-around experts, a guild of generalists, proficient in everything we are now struggling to get good at. Skill issues will not be in their dictionaries. Yes, it will. Junior developer, there will always, so junior developer and the responsibilities and the bar that's set for junior developers, it has risen. That is true. Junior positions still exist. I do agree with you needing to be a little bit more knowledgeable, like have a widespread knowledge for dev positions, and I think that is beneficial. But I also see people taking that advice to the extreme, and they're not getting enough depth of knowledge to be able to stand out in certain areas, because you can also niche down a little bit and stand out and add something to the team by niching down even on the front end. And I see a lot of people just neglecting that. So it's probably a bit hyperbolic what he's saying. Claude, the hottest new guy in the block in ChatGPT, even though in its depressive phase lately, are the tools defining the reality of software engineering that has to come. This is true. But there's always some truth to this, right? You're always going to have people that, for whatever, there are a lot of different reasons. We're not going to jump into it. That are just AI is going to bring on doomsday, and we are all going to get replaced. And then eventually humanity is going to be wiped out completely, or just controlled by AI, right? And there's always a sliver of truth when you take that statement and you stop being so hyperbolic with it. It's like, yeah, AI is affecting these dev positions and it's changing these dev positions in this way, but it's always an extreme, it's always in a very minor way compared to how it's become hyperbolic online. from people that essentially are just miserable people that just want to spread misery and just probably trigger people that AI is going to replace them. There are a lot of really dumb people that are just parroting that kind of advice, and there are a lot of fearful people that are parroting that advice. AI, I think one thing good software engineers are realizing is that AI is making software engineers dumber. It's making junior developers dumber and lack critical thinking skills. And I think a lot of people are depending, again, we've dove into this, but on these abstractions that solve a lot of problems that they could gain critical thinking skills through thinking through these problems. And leaning on ChatGPT. And it's the same with Stack Overflow. People that would just copy and paste entire solutions on Stack Overflow without even trying to care about it. Like, these people have always existed. They would just copy and paste. They don't try to understand the problem. They don't understand what the code is doing. They just copy, paste. And then they'll even copy, paste their old code and then forget how to write it themselves. And then when you need to build some complexity into that solution, or that solution doesn't quite solve your problem, you're lost. Let's find the next piece to copy and paste from Google. There are always really bad developers that do that, right? And those really bad developers and those really bad mindsets, or people with those really bad mindsets, are now using AI to do that, and they are becoming really bad developers. So that hasn't changed. There are a lot of really bad developers out there, and I don't think AI makes a difference in that. Now, in 5 to 10 years, let's see how AI evolves software engineering positions. I think it is going to become a little bit more declarative, and we're going to tell AI how to do things, and it's going to figure out more. It's going to come up with the most optimized solution, and a lot of it's going to get wrapped up into an abstraction where it's kind of like Ruby, I think. I haven't worked with Ruby, but it feels like, if I were to work with Ruby, because I was looking into it a bit, and I was going to pair with someone on it, it feels like you tell it what to do and it does it. You don't worry about how it does it. And I think that's the evolution in 5 to 10 years. It's kind of these abstractions and very opinionated ways of doing things that kind of lock you in to just using these tools, using these libraries in a way where you don't really have a lot of custom control, and it isn't worth the money of a company to rebuild some of these solutions because they've been hashed out so much. We're just going to essentially keep getting abstractions on top of abstractions on top of abstractions, where it's not even feasible for a company to spend money on software engineering to dig into the details, at least for most software engineers. So we are going to be left with a lot of these abstractions, which can be a hell in itself. That is a whole other conversation. But I feel like that's kind of the evolution with how AI is going to affect software engineering. We're going to tell it what to do, not how to do it, and it's going to do that thing. So that's the only way that I really see AI meaningfully impacting software engineering in the next 5 to 10 years, but I could be completely wrong. Where was I? The epitome of acceleration. LLMs are making learning faster. No, they're not for most people, because most people don't know how to do it. More action-based. What does that mean? The dopamine reward of succeeding and doing simple tasks is hooking millions of people to code. I mean, that's elite code, right? That's elite code. It makes people feel like they're actually growing as a software engineer and being competitive in the market when they've never had a dev job and they're not even applying for FANG-like companies. That literally is the elite code cult. This allows for a more rapid development of candidates and will also cut the unworthy. I don't see ChatGPT rapidly accelerating people's growth. I see people using it extremely ineffectively, and I see it being more of a crutch than a helper. If you can't do a task, you are not supposed to be in tech. Fair. Tech is about solving problems with technology. If you are scared of LLMs taking your job, you should find another job. This is true. The pressure will simply be too much for you to handle. Yes. And I think that's a real thing. I think the pressure is mounting at a lot of people, but I think it's ignorance that is causing that. With this, I close my article and express my greatest respects to 3 individuals: John McPhee, Terry Davis, and Alex Mahan. All right, peace. Thank you. All right, what do you guys think about the article? Come on. Who hurt this guy? Which one of you hurt this guy? I feel like this guy is just pessimistic. Is it just me? I feel like this guy is like overly pessimistic. Holy shit. But that's DevOps in a nutshell. The number of DevOps engineers that I've met have this like very pessimistic view of just life and society in general and tech teams. Like, they are the people constantly bitching about other people on the team and bitching about, like, if I was in charge, I would do it this way. But, they don't want someone that tells them no, or they don't, they're just that type of person. There are good DevOps engineers. I'm not saying every DevOps engineer, but I feel like a lot of DevOps engineers are just kind of like they're just the grumpy developers. It's very anxiety inducing. Hiring rate is normal now, same as pre-pandemic levels. People are just comparing things to the golden age. I don't think it is normal, plumbing. I don't think there's any substantial data to support that with software engineering specifically. Plumbing, I think what you're referring to are pockets of tech, but I've looked through that, and I would love to link it in Discord. DM me in Discord, Plumbing, but that is not true. I've not seen any data to support that specifically. With software engineering, because you got to realize we are talking about junior developers right now too. We're not talking about mid, we're not talking about seniors. So I think more context is meaningful in that statement, and without that context, I completely disagree with that. There's no way a person that ever worked as a developer job wrote this. Juniors coming in as experts, are they high? That's an oxymoron. Well, I think I do understand the sentiment of like what he's going for. And there are, and I will repeat this, there are a lot of people that truly underestimate what, like, the depth of knowledge they need to have to be competitive in this market. Again, I don't know what content creators have set this really low bar, but there's a really low bar among junior developers, and that's why I did that video with Derek. There's a really low bar among many junior developers where you guys have no fucking clue, like, the depth of knowledge that you need. So this is, like, there's a lot of truth to what he's saying, but I would even argue, like, a lot of people have been given a misconception of that bar and what it should be set at pre-pandemic levels. We're talking about, like, before 2020. Hot take, there's a market for prompt devs. Dom the founder, thank you for not calling it a prompt engineer position. That is the cringiest title ever. Back in my day, you can land a 6-figure job with a Hello World project. How old are you? I think my brother is looking to become a prompt dev, and he can program, but he's worried about the future, so trying it out. Okay. I think this guy has succeeded at writing the perfectly triggering article everyone will talk about. Gives us something to talk about. That is true. Yeah, like, he's purposefully being antagonistic. I think the article is fun in that way. What's up, Happy? Mid to senior? Yeah, okay, gotcha. Sounds like I belong in DevOps. Okay, well, Twilight, there you go. We help progress your career. That's what we do here. All right, you guys ready? Ready for Article 2. All right, so I will link this in chat again, and then after the stream, I will link it in the description. Yeah, prompt dev, there's a minority of positions with that. Prompt engineer, prompt dev is just a stupid label. You're not a developer, you're not an engineer. Like, I like, we have to draw the line somewhere. You're not a developer. You're not an engineer for building a prompt for a language model, just to chat with it. You just aren't. I feel like we just keep handing, like, sales engineer. We just keep tossing out the word engineer or developer when it doesn't really apply to your position. Like, I don't really care if you call yourself a software engineer or developer, and I've stated this in the past, but like, not every position needs to be a developer position or an engineer position. I think like some people need to just drop their egos a bit and understand like what the position actually is. Maybe I need to go into DevOps. All right. Let's go. Article 2. Let's link it. All right. We ready? The title of this live stream, The Death of the Junior Engineer. And what's up, Fist? I see ya. How you doing? All right. So, actually, let me take a drink of water. Only civil and mechanical engineers? All right. All right, let's go. The death of the junior developer. This blog post is somewhat speculative. The sky might not be falling, but my spidey sense is definitely tingling. The way we are all doing our jobs in software is changing potentially in big ways. So let's think of this as a thought exercise. All right. With the disclaimer, we're off. I've been chatting with a bunch of both junior and senior developer type folk at different companies lately by barficulating these conversations. What the fuck is that word? These conversations I picked up on an emerging new pattern, which is that like 80% of you are way smarter than me. My goodness, what have I been doing? Okay. But also another pattern, which is that a lot of people picked a bad year to be a junior developer. True. A whole lot of people. I wouldn't want to be just getting started in the industry today. Not just the computer industry, any industry. It's a bad year to be a junior, anything. This is true. My wife, Lean, and I are... Oh, and by the way, let me shout the author out. Steve... Oh, God. Yegge? I tried. Steve. Thank you, Steve. My wife and I are huge horror movie buffs, so to reflect the somber theme of today's rant, I will use horror movie titles to introduce our sections. Let's start by talking about what's happening to junior developers, The Purge. All right. Our first story of the day is about a law firm and has nothing to do with programming, but it is indeed centrally relevant to the crisis that is just starting to loom ominously, as crises love to do. Buddy Gene Kim gave me permission to share a story about his friend who is managing partner at a 50-person law firm. Short, one might surmise that all hell is breaking loose at said law firm because of ChatGPT, with some wondering whether the entire structure of their firm, which has been stable for a very long time, might now be completely wrong. Their whole comp structure, pension, succession planning, everything is going through an existential crisis due to a freaking chatbot. I use ChatGPT for legal stuff. I'm not advising you do that. That's not legal advice, but I found it to be very helpful for my purposes. I'm a big fan. And sorry to this law firm for that. The problem you see is that there could be a future where you don't need junior associates anymore. Increasingly, they need only senior associates who describe the tasks to be done, create the prompts, review the resulting work for accuracy and correctness. The high-end LLMs do so well with tasks normally fielded by junior associate lawyers that there isn't much room left for the real junior associates on payroll. The LLM can produce research, summaries, briefs, contracts, memos, pleadings, petitions, anything they need. All the documents it creates are perfect, with the catch that if someone senior doesn't double check its work before a judge sees it, you might wind up in jail or something. Catching the LLM in a hallucination, catching a junior associate in a mistake, pretty similar. Fair. Really just two options for generating the same input, except one of those options is fast and tireless and essentially free. The other one puked on the chocolate fountain at the holiday party. I didn't puke, right? I went on like a company outing, my second deposition. I didn't puke. I think I like irritated the CEO because he had like a really old bottle of wine and he was celebrating something with the company, and I mixed it with Coke because someone told me to mix it with Coke. And so I never lived that down, but I don't think I puked. Why am I thinking about this? We're moving on. You picked a bad year to be a junior associate lawyer. That's for damn sure. Sorry, graduating class of 2024 sucks to be you. Okay. I think this is fair. And a lot of your junior and even internship, like, I think internships can be really effective at getting a good cultural feel for someone and just giving them a test run to see if you do want to hire them in long term. But the tasks that you're going to be doing as a junior developer, as an intern developer, the tasks that you're going to be doing as in the beginning, a junior developer, tasks that you're going to be doing with a lot of just associate and junior positions, they've already been replaced, not even by AI, by low code solutions. At least there's software to automate a lot, and there's low code solutions to replace a lot of really low junior developers already. And AI will just up that bar a bit. But yeah, this is true. I just don't know how it impacts other I don't know how it impacts other professions. I'd be very curious to hear about that outside the dev world. What's up, Ryan? The Shining. Gene shared the law firm story to illustrate how widespread this problem is. He suggests that the same chaos, which is undoubtedly unfolding across legal firms everywhere, could affect all writing and editorial jobs. This is true. You can imagine a world where demand for junior writers and editors starts to evaporate. Market forces are nudging everyone towards having senior writers who are also good prompt engineers, an arrangement that meets all of their needs faster and cheaper than hiring junior humans. Gene, as an accomplished and for my blog posts, I'm going to be using ChatGPT to automate taking my transcripts and writing blog posts. I'm going to use it to help me build a course where I kind of come up with I build 1,000 to 2,000 words and have it organize that information for me. It could do it really quickly. I think Figma is coming out with that new AI tool, which as a front-end developer, I have been waiting for, and I'm going to use it. I'm definitely going to use it. Why wouldn't I use it? It's cheap. I don't have money to pay for a designer. And so that is the reality of AI. And I can see it, I could definitely see it replacing a lot of writing jobs. But it can, create a lot of business. Well, never mind. We're just going to stop with that. Gene, as an accomplished and senior author, is delighted with his productivity gains with his LLM of choice, Claude. He showed me a big writing project that he'd just finished, in which he had spent easily 45 minutes crafting the prompt, refining it until he had a 7,500 word narrative that could serve as a starting point for rewriting, editing, and adjustment. In comparison, this blog post is about half that size, and that draft was fantastic. I've read it, and it's glorious. On a good day, Gene can write 1,000 words per day. His estimate is that Claude did for him in 90 minutes what would normally have taken him 10 days. It solves the blank page problem and gets him to the 20-yard line where the fun begins. Okay. That's fair. Essentially, it's kind of used as a tool to springboard into being a little bit more creative as a human. And I think Google and different search engines are willing to crack down on AI-generated content too. I don't know how hard they're going with that, but I think there is a big push against that. But there are a lot of other things that you can write for besides a public blog as well, which will replace some tasks that humans would have to do. He estimates using an LLM as a writing tool gets him there 2 to 3 times faster now, helping him meet his personal requirements and quality bar. Gene could not be happier, at least for himself, because in addition to being faster, he also feels working this way is more fun. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, right? He's a happy dude, but he is terrified for his teenage kids. That is fair. That is fair. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I'd not be happy with a 10-page storybook written by AI. Can't imagine the mess a longer book would be in. I don't think it should write the entire thing. I don't. But I think one thing that I struggled with writing articles was solidifying it into a very well formatted and structured document. I can take my knowledge and I can spit it out into a bunch of bullet points, and I can talk about and make really important points, and I can make clip worthy speeches to some extent, right? But to actually organize that, you can kind of get most of the way there. Where he's kind of talking about is like have that initial generation, then work with it. But up here, I think. But I use it where like I just spit out all of my ideas and have it organize things a little bit better. What's up, live stream? How you doing? I watched the pod scene from the original black and white 50s version of this movie when I was about 8. And wow, that was traumatizing, scary. My wife has been also watching horror movies since she was about 4, and we share a deep love for horror, probably because we're all messed up from childhood. That's fair. We've seen the same plot play, and because we're not... Never mind. We've seen the same plot play out for the legal profession and writing editing jobs where LLMs are threatening to out the people. Let's watch the same movie again in some genres closer to home. Just a few days ago, our illustrations head of AI, Rishab Meratra, was showing me a classifier and multi-class prediction model that he had trained and deployed in a single day with ChatGPT. He said it would have been a 6-week university senior level intern project a year ago. This is affecting data science too. An old friend, great programmer and mathematician who left AI for quantum computing for a few years back, is back to programming. He confided somewhat excitedly that even though he does a lot of programming, he doesn't consider himself a programmer anymore. He said he's more of a reviewer or a coach or nanny, something like that. He makes ChatGPT do all the work and he just crafts prompts and reviews the output. That resonated with me since I, too, have been replaced by a bubble bath plant pod human who pretends to be a programmer. What? I have been replaced by a bubble bath plant pod human who pretends to be a programmer but is in fact outsourcing almost all of it. Was this person laid off or something? And then like someone they were surprised didn't get laid off is working at that company. Why? It's fun to say that sentence, but why? All right. Naturally, when I say make ChatGPT do all the work, there's plenty of coding we still do by hand. What I mean is that chat first is the default. It's not the default for most engineers. No. Writing by hand with completions naturally is our fallback. No, that's not this is not a common convention in the programming world. It's used as an assistant, as a tool, but you got to realize like a lot of developers really like coding. And ChatGPT does take that away from them. You're going to find a lot of software engineers that just do not feel fulfilled and they don't get those aha moments and they're not going to really enjoy their job nearly as much. I have not heard this from people in the field where they're constantly leaning on ChatGPT. I'm almost thinking that this is, I feel like this person got laid off or something. Just with this description here of shitting on whoever this is. I don't know. I'm kind of getting... I feel like people that write these articles are just... They have a grudge against AI. And they take a few stories and they make it sound like it's most of the industry. I don't know about that. My quantum friend and I are both finding much less need for the fallback recently. Since then, I found several other super amazing colleagues who have also adopted this coding strategy to accelerate themselves. And frankly, it has been a bit of relief to hear confirmation coming from so many great people that chat first programming is indeed a new thing. It's a new thing. I would agree with this. It's a very new thing that is not adopted throughout the industry. Very new thing. I feel like this person is being very hyperbolic about the spread of it within the industry, and I've not found this to be true. Yeah. All right, is it really new? Clearly, this new thing has already been around in other domains since even the original ChatGPT was able to replace a lot of human labor. I mean, this is low-code solutions were a replacement for developers, and they even upped the standards for what junior developers were expected to do. I mean, your content management systems were a replacement for a lot of traditional junior developers where, you know, like marketing doesn't need to fight with or like depend on developers to push out certain things when they're just using WordPress, and you can have a site builder or you can have plugins that do like 99% of what you need to do. I think low-code solutions and content management systems has already been a thing that is up to standards for junior developers. I don't think the basic ChatGPT was that much of an upgrade. It was more of a lookup than anything. And then it got really wrong very quickly, and then it slowly improved from there. But for coding, let's be serious here. Chat coding has sucked. It would often be more effort to coax the LLM into working solution than to write it yourself. Yeah, it hasn't been great. It's really good at replacing documentation lookups, to be honest, because you could test this stuff. You could look this stuff up. You can go through GitHub repositories. You can verify all this. So if ChatGPT gives you code, you test that code. Does it work? Let's make sure it works. And 99.9% of the code that it's given me works very well, but I have the paid version. A lot of people complain about the free version. I don't think it sucks that much. I use it as like a documentation lookup. I think it's really good for that. Because, other than that, you're going on Stack Overflow, which is kind of just it's always been a toxic platform, and you never ask questions on there. You just hope that your question has already been asked and it's already been answered. You don't actually interact there if you are a decent person and respect your time. I just feel like it's not very productive to spend time chatting on Stack Overflow. And I think that's very similar for ChatGPT. You're just hoping that it can get you most of the way there, and it essentially has replaced Stack Overflow and is very effective for that. But it also will expand documentation, which is awesome. It's way better than Stack Overflow. It'll take documentation that it'll read and it'll expand it into examples and point out certain things that just weren't explained clearly within the documentation. And it's going to get really good when it can efficiently go through, look at the documentation and go through the actual code in your repositories to be able to, what was I just looking up before, where I was having trouble finding all of the, in my live coding stream on Wednesday, I was having trouble finding the error types that were exported with it was like a Apollo Server Express or some library. And the documentation wasn't pointing to a lot of that. And it was a little confusing trying to find exactly what error types I had available. And what did I do? I went into the actual repository and I found some stuff, but essentially I actually dug into the code of that NPM module, looked at what it was actually exporting and what I could import, which is a really simple way to figure out what you have available to you when you're using libraries. But ChatGPT, when it starts doing that and very effectively, it just becomes a supercharged documentation that's going to be incredibly useful. So that is true. I found it to be way more effective than a lot of people find it to be. But I still wonder, is that because I'm using the paid version? And I think most people are using the free version. I think that's a big part of it. With the previous model generations, if you feed in 800 inline source code file and ask for substantial changes, even GPT-4 Turbo, which many of you are using right now, will often run amok. Well-argued hallucinations, code that fails to parse, snarky code, left as a... See, I don't get this. Empty functions, designs leading you in circles going nowhere, unexpected refactorings, missing code, and all manner... That's still crazy to me that so many people experience this, and I don't. I don't know why. You probably tried it yourself. You know what I mean? I do not. So chat programming has been a sort of a bust. Nowadays, most people equate AI coding assistance with code auto completions. They think of chat as something you use when you're just starting out, maybe as a faster doc search. I think that's really effective. In fact, there is a widespread perception that chat is for junior developers and becomes less useful as you gain experience. And truth be told, this wasn't entirely inaccurate. Prior to mid-May, the models weren't quite there yet, but for the past 6 weeks, things have been very, very different. You, my friend, are missing out. That perception that chat is for juniors is not a flat-out misconception, one that I pray is stone dead in your heart by the end of this post. This is true. This is very, very true. We're going to pause here. What happens when you replace all of your junior criminal lawyers using AI, then government is part of the AI and have control of all of your conversations with the AI? Security is a big concern. And dumping that, security is a huge concern. And that is going to slow down the adoption of AI making meaningful contributions to progressing the company forward. And it should be a legitimate security concern. And of course, you're going to have to scrub a lot of really sensitive information from it. And you should be doing that anyways when you toss it in ChatGPT. Like some people just like say, hey, can you review my resume? And they'll upload their resume. It'll review, like it'll actually analyze all the text in that resume and store that. And people need to be more careful of that. You don't know how your information specifically is going to be used in the future and where it's going to be leaked. So please be careful about tossing sensitive information into AI. Most horror stories follow a similar format. Some horrific thing happens. People argue and panic, eventually putting their differences aside and band together to improve things and survive. Hope. I don't think that's how this story is going to end, this blog post. I have a feeling that's not how this is going to end. Am I using GPT-4 or 4.0? I'm using 4.0. And having the same experience with ChatGPT, it's awesome and very helpful. Same here. I'm really surprised by this. I think some people might have, I think there are a lot of people that just used it briefly and then never used it again or rarely use it. So they haven't seen what it's upgraded to. I just turned off the model training and hope for the best. Okay. Nice. All right. Shopping mall. I think this is a really interesting concept. It's a really long article. Wow. But I think it's an interesting concept to use these horror films. Chat-based programming, which I preemptively labeled chat-oriented programming, just chat because I suspect I'll be saying it a lot, is a brand spanking new phenomenon. Like seriously, just over a month old. I first noticed it when GPT 4.0 came out, which was mid-May. You remember that big manufactured drama, right? About the new OpenAI 4.0 GPT model supposedly having Scarlett Johansson's voice. That's the one. That model changed everything about programming overnight. When GPT-4, and by the way, you can use GPT 4.0 for mock interviews. We should do a live stream where we do this. You can use this for mock interviews. It is fantastic for mock interviews. When GPT 4.0 dropped, it could suddenly edit 1,000 line source files. I figure that encompasses 95% of the source files and most repos worldwide with tremendous precision. But you need to connect the files, though. That's what's lacking for it to be very effective. In most repos worldwide with tremendous precision and faithfulness to the original, leaving the untouched parts of the file 99.9% diff perfect. Every once in a very rare, while I see it drop a space character or slightly misindent a line, but that's it. From what I've seen, Google's Gemini and Anthropic's Claude 3 Opus have also cleared this hurdle, which makes multi-model prompting a good bulwark against hallucinations and a great way to select the best candidate for a design. Just feed your query to all of them and make them fight it out. It's a common CHOP technique. Briefly, CHOP is coding via iterative prompt refinement. Everyone's attempts to get it to do something complex used to peter out after 4 to 5 iterations, and the model couldn't make progress. But now your iterations usually converge, which means you're reviewing and ultimately approving more and more LLM code and writing less and less yourself. So programming is leveled up into a problem of explaining your situation to the LLM that is slinging context, since you'll want to include a lot of information from different sources and then merging the output back into your code base. We better get a tool for this. Chop. I really just want to stress there are a lot of people becoming really bad developers by leaning too hard on this. There are a lot of professional developers becoming really bad developers that are leaning too hard on this. I think it's incredibly easy to become just be able to eventually figure out how to create very effective prompts to get AI to do what you want. And it takes a little bit of practice. It's not an engineering position. Stop calling it a prompt engineering position. But I think has a very shallow learning curve. I think it's very easy to learn. What is more difficult, and where this is an expectation among the most companies, is actually being a good programmer. This is going to be for years to come, many years to come, where this AI and using AI to help speed you up as a developer, this is very easy to learn how to do this. If this is what you need to do down the road to keep up with other developers, this is very easy to learn. Now, On the off chance that you're wrong, which you are, but you can disagree with me, on the off chance that you're wrong and you actually do need to become a good programmer on your own, and you need to critically think about things and problem solve on your own, then you should focus heavily on becoming a good software engineer without this dependence, without it actually coding for you, without it actually solving your problems. Because this can be picked up very quickly if it's needed. Becoming a good software engineer takes many, many years. And so just on the off chance that you're wrong, be careful that you don't hyper-focus on this, because you hear some people that are trying to trigger you, that are trying to be a bit hyperbolic because it gets attention. Avoid people that are tricking you into thinking that you need to hyper-focus on utilizing AI as a programmer. You are going to become a really, really bad programmer, and you will get replaced, guaranteed. Moving on. Upgrade. 2018. The big model upgrade was life-changing for people who have already been coding in raw ChatGPT, which is still the world's most used and most popular AI coding assistant. ChatGPT coders have been using Chop Style for a year or more, but it has been only for the bravest, most patient, and dumbest of early adopters, whereas now it's ready for everyone. Of course, raw chat involves a lot of manual assembly of context in and shoveling responses out, and it can get tedious, so many programmers use coding assistants instead. I guess business is good if you are using Control-C or V keys on the keyboard, blah, blah, blah. All AI coding assistants benefit from this upgrade too. It has certainly been huge for our coding assistant Cody, which in my opinion has been the best chat due to our automated context assembly engine, which saves you from having to explain your code base every time. Plus, Cody Pro lets you use both GPT-4o and Claude and others, so you can spot check all of your work with another LLM. I'm going to call out, you know what? No, we don't need to call out anyone. It was going to be a nice call out, but it's irrelevant. I want you to shut off the AI assistants in your editor. I am so confident that you will become a bad developer by using the AI assistants that I want you to completely shut it off for good. If you need to use it sparingly, or you need to use ChatGPT 4o for mentorship or mock interviews and other purposes, you can use that as an external thing. You look it up outside of your editor. Shut it off in your editor. Is a terrible idea. I've seen many new developers leaning on that. Shut it off. I don't even have one. Awesome. You do not want one. You are already way ahead of so many junior developers that are creating a dependency on this. I've used GPT-4o to help me read a very long lease agreement to better understand it. I've used it. Yep. Very effective for legalese. I like it. Again, not legal advice. So I think I gotta say that every time. Anyways, we're moving on. The model upgrade is arguably even more effective with our inline edits feature, which handles dropping the response directly into your code. When we're shoveling code out of the chat window, Cody just changes your code in place undoably and retriably. The models are getting smarter, but the integration with your workflow is getting tighter as well. What's happening is a big deal. Programming this way is arguably on its way to being an order of magnitude speed up from completions-based programming. A 10x improvement might sound like an exaggeration. We just saw examples from legal practice, publishing, and data science in the same ballpark, with 5 to 30x speed ups for certain kinds of tasks, and estimated at least 2 to 3 times overall boost to productivity. I would like to see data to support this. I would be interested in looking into it. When you start saying stuff like this, it's nice to reference how you got these numbers. And I think that kind of just makes this entire paragraph mute. It doesn't matter. We're skipping it. You can quibble over the numbers, but it's clear. The fact that you're saying like you can quibble over the numbers makes me think that you don't have numbers to back this up. and you're kind of just estimating. Show me even how you got these estimations. Like this sentence alone tells me this paragraph is completely irrelevant. But it's clear that programmers using Chop with these new models are getting a turbo boost. I don't think it's happening like you think it is. It's not happening in the capacity, and it's not nearly as widespread as you made it sound. It's still a very minority of developers that even lean on AI to help them just a little bit. I think this is over-exaggerated, and I think you're using this example for writing. You got to realize, like, what do attorneys care about? Do they care about the meaningless tasks of just writing the same things over and over and over? Or do they care about helping their clients? Do they like spending more time with conversations with their clients and being able to generate documents and spend less time with that, right? Do they like spending more time in court to represent you? Or do they want to go through and write the same like a lot of these documents that are created, they're just templates anyways, and they're just plopping in certain things, right? So it's automating a lot of stuff that attorneys don't care about, but programmers care about coding. Programmers like coding. I don't think this example that you keep referencing to your attorney friend or that office, I don't think it transfers over to this. I don't like programmers aren't willing to adopt it in this capacity to take all of their enjoyment out of programming. I don't think this is a thing. There are going to be certain templates that can be created. There are going to be certain automations that could be made, but by and large, like programmers generally like diving deep into the code and writing the how of how something works. They like writing the implementation itself. It's fun, and it's fun to struggle and then go those aha moments. And it just, there's just a feeling that programmers get that I don't think attorneys get, apparently. So I don't think this transfers over. The Mangler. Trivia, my brother told me that movie was so scary that he had to leave the theater. Never saw it myself, but the short story was fun. We're going to do story number 5 now. The very last story, and it's mine, and it's about programming, and the plot is different from the others. I want to know what your position is. This is where we learn the hard way why chat programming is for senior devs. Please keep your hands and limbs inside the carriage during the ride. The other day, GPT-4o shocked me with one of its coding proposals while I was chopping away with it at a project. It was such a shock that I laughed for minutes, practically unhinged. I am not... I don't know why this is funny. I can just see you being unhinged. It's not an insult. I just can see you literally laughing for minutes in the office, completely unhinged. I don't know why I can envision that, but I believe you when you say this. I am not often shocked, least of all by looking at the code for a working program. I presented a small design problem of GPT, asking for an evaluation of my options. It's great for that. Chat-oriented programming Chop isn't just about coding. There are a lot of design discussions too. You can do everything, even writing sometimes with the LLM as a pair partner for some reason. And this is true. And this is honestly, this is a use case for junior developers to use it as a pair programming partner that doesn't tell you the answers. Gives you hints when you get stuck. You can use it as a mentor. For some reason, this time, ChatGPT launched full bore into redesigning an entire subsystem of the framework I was stuck in, which had an issue I was trying to work around. I'm sure you have seen this whack behavior from LLMs before. The difference is now they are very good at rewriting things, and sometimes they'll swing for the fences, consequences, shaman sequences. I don't know what. GPT-4o breezed quickly past most of the sane options before plowing straight into the let's rewrite it all scorched earth mode. Clearly not having read Joel Spolsky, it spewed out an unusually long answer, hundreds of lines of code and instructions presenting thorough and persuasive reasoning supporting this approach. And the rewrite would have worked. It was a very direct solution to my problem, so it wasn't wrong per se. There are rarely things in design that are truly wrong, like wrong, as there are exceptions to most rules. What did I just... Okay, we're going to skip that. There was only one teeny tiny issue with it, which is that it would have killed someone. Okay, not on my project, hopefully, but if the model is currently spitting out similar suggestions to people working on software that controls giant saws, a machine shop, someone's going to die. I think you can write tests around your code, but listen, if you are, okay, this is a message. This is where I'm going to support you a little bit. Like if you are writing, well, I don't know if this supports you. If you are writing code that controls some like electronic piece of a chainsaw, you probably should write tests, automated tests for that code. Like this is an example of being extremely hyperbolic. What was your original point with this? It's for senior devs. So you feel like junior devs aren't going to be aware of the mistakes, and I think that is true. Okay, if that's your original point, fine. But I think it's more along the lines of just being a lesson of testing the code that it's writing, and junior developers do struggle with knowing exactly what to test and what to prioritize. This is true. Not like, oh, it's not even on your project. What is the point of this story? What? So it had nothing to do with your project, but if this code was used to control a giant saw, oh, sorry, I said chainsaw, a giant saw and a machine shop, like, really? I feel like this person at this point is just being hyperbolic to be hyperbolic to create fear in you of now we got a fear that if AI is used to create automations that are potentially life-threatening, I feel like this is just reaching. Test everything, indeed. What was the point of this? I don't know. Just the way this ended, I don't know why it just seems so silly. I get it. Okay. So senior developers are going to be able to identify this stuff. Junior developers can, but it's going to be a little bit trickier. I'm not going to go into it again. Okay, that's the point. We're skipping that section. GPT's redesign was awful. So cabin in the woods. But not when you look directly at it up close. It was downright cozy. You had to pull back and look at the design in the broader context of its interactions with other subsystems, but also support, maintenance, upgrades, add-ons, and a bunch of other dimensions that are critically important to software design and engineering. With that wider lens, it was an unbreakable level train wreck waiting to happen, but it was wearing a superb disguise. A less experienced dev would surely have fallen for it. I could feel the power and the attraction of the approach it was espousing, the force of the arguments backing it. The whole thing was appealingly packaged, technically correct, and laid out for you to just take it and run. My pal Chris Smith says the word I'm looking for is specious. So yeah, that. And it just hit me all at once how hilariously inappropriate and potentially dangerous this answer was. It was so impressive and so spooky. I laughed and laughed like a little kid watching bubble bath plant monsters replacing all the people. This, okay. Hold on. My senior colleagues have recently recounted similar chat scenarios in which more junior dev would have been completely taken in, potentially losing days to weeks of work going the wrong direction. Or worse, chat, it seems, is safer for senior programmers than it is for junior developers, and a lot of companies are going to interpret safer to mean better. Buckle up, topsy-turvy times ahead. Okay, so just reiterating on his original point that it's more for senior developers. A lot of companies ask me, how can we tell which parts were written by AI and which parts by the programmer? Well, if chat-oriented programming becomes the dominant modality for programmers, then LLMs will be writing the vast majority of all source code worldwide. That's a gargantuan shift, and it might even shake up the traditional software engineering roles. We've seen how this shift affected a law firm. Again, I think this is just a bad example. I think this is a weak example. I don't think it transfers over into software engineering. So we've seen how this shift affected a law firm, a publisher, and an engineering sibling discipline of data science. Stock in junior contributors is down, and there is concern that there could be a market crash. That presents a very serious problem for new people in those fields. What do you do? How do you learn the ropes? Not to mention find gainful employment. What are the ropes now, and what do the companies do when their senior people retire? They could wind up like COBOL world, which is in a worldwide crunch because there are no junior COBOL devs to replace the ones who retired. Ironically, these huge legacy companies will be rooting hardest for the LLMs to write all their code. Things are changing fast. I'm an optimist, and I generally think, or at least hope, that as companies become more productive in the coming months and years, they simply get correspondingly more ambitious. Everyone will need to get a lot more serious about testing and reviewing code. Senior devs could become full-time reviewers, and junior devs shepherd the LLMs, maybe. It doesn't necessarily have to end with the post-apocalyptic wasteland for recent CS grads. Jesus. It's just, I get the style of writing, and I think it's purposefully hyperbolic. I just think it's highly inaccurate. And what I don't see it trending in this direction. It's like what could be. It's a lot of like what could be. And I think you using your law firm as an example in a completely different profession, I just don't think it transfers over. I do think a junior developer, I think this could be a thing where junior developers could interact more with automation setup that are interacting with LLMs that might help manage the code base a bit. I could see that being a thing in the next 5 years, maybe. For some companies. Not majority, some. And that's really for junior developers that don't really have the depth of knowledge or the experience working with the larger code bases. I can see that being a thing. 5 years from now. For some companies. It doesn't necessarily... Okay, we're just going to skip. 28 days later. I wrote this post a week ago and have been thinking hard about whether I believe the premise, which is that within a few years, a norm for source code will be that it is written and modified by LLMs via prompting. Like all of it is written. I'd be very curious if you think like in... So here's where we're getting into something a little bit more tangible that we could talk about. Within a few years, the norm... So within a few years... The norm for source code will be that it is written and modified by LLMs. When you say written, do you mean completely written? Or do you just mean like modified? Some of it's written. Like a repository has modified code. I'd be curious like if you think that the norm is going to be where the repository and the start of it, that foundation is written. I mean, like the foundation might. Right? We already have templates, and I think AI can help generate these templates very, very quickly. For all practical purposes, all source code will be written this way, with exceptions being ever rare. I don't think this is going to happen in a few years. Show me examples of where companies are starting to adopt this at scale. I don't hear about this at all when I talk to software engineers. Like this is not, there isn't even like a % of companies that I hear about integrating LLMs at this depth at this point. Not even close to a % of companies that are doing this. So what makes you think within a few years this is going to be the norm and all source code will be written this way with exceptions becoming ever rarer? I don't agree with you, and I'm open to having my mind change, but I have not seen that to be the case. Not only do I believe it, I could even see it happening in 12 to 18 months. There is no chance this happens in a year to a year and a half. The current rate of LLM progress. I think the change will have a ton of fallout, only some of it foreseeable. One casualty might well be junior devs in the sense that they become less marketable and could cause various kinds of crunches across the industry. We've already seen the big companies doing engineering layoffs to make room for AI practitioners. Okay, so no. Here's a misconception a lot of people have about the layoffs, and you can look at, what is it? Layoffs.fy, what is it? Hold on, layoffs. There it is. Okay, so we're just going to load this up real quick. You can, there's a layoffs tracker. If you guys don't know about it, really useful site. You could just check out all the layoffs happening at different companies that are reported. Feel free to dig into it. But from what I've seen, software engineers are not the they're not the main people getting laid off in a lot of larger tech companies. A lot of recruiters, a lot of DEI people, a lot of middle managers. And you're going to see like more kind of like base staff that are given more opportunities to take ownership and given leadership opportunities to just have some autonomy. And that's why you're starting to see this huge increase in a lot of full stack positions that are hiring mid to senior developers who have what's needed to be able to take ownership of certain parts of the code base or certain projects. And they have that independence and resourcefulness, and they've built up that mindset, and they've built up that experience to be able to do that. That's what companies are hiring for. Like there are now I'm not saying they're replacing like front end or back end positions, but we are just seeing full stack take off a little bit more for more experienced developers, where at the entry level, it's more front end focused, more back end focused. And you can get front end, you still have a lot of front end senior positions. You still have a lot of back end senior positions. So I'm not saying that to say it's replaced them, but companies are looking to cut out a lot of middle managers and people that are basically just taking up the company's revenue that don't need to be there, where what they're managing and their contribution by being a middle manager just isn't effective to move the company's revenue forward, right? So dig through that and actually try to find data of who's being laid off at a company. It's not a lot of software engineers. And I would even argue it's a lot of other positions outside of tech. So when you hear like massive layoffs, like I think it's worth your time, if you're really fearful of it, to dig into that. So big companies doing engineer layoffs, how many? Yes, they're laying off engineers, but what engineer positions and how many? We're talking about software engineers. So what type of engineers? For AI, I don't think the massive layoffs are bringing in a huge influx of AI engineers, and it's just AI engineer. Like we're just laying off so many people within this company to bring in AI practitioners. I don't see that happening. Again, I am definitely willing to be convinced otherwise, but I have not seen anything to indicate that. So I'm wondering if this is like, it'd be nice to just get a feeling if like this person has data to back this up. Is it from his specific company and that's what's happening? But he's saying like big companies, like where are you getting this? Like what data am I missing where I'm just not able to pick this up? Like if you're watching this after the live stream, I would love to know, but I just have not seen this to be the case. Small companies may be faced with their own version of the decision. Why hire a junior developer to write mediocre code when basically to train them to be a senior developer, because senior developers are always going to be desired. And when the LLM will do that for you 10 times faster. So yeah, I'm worried. I think we might see an influx of trying to integrate AI, and I think it is going to go horribly wrong. How it goes wrong is going to determine that adoption, because like there was a big push for low code solutions and there was a fear for engineers, and companies did try to adopt it and it failed. And the result of that failure and why it failed caused companies to almost never do that again. Now, content management systems to replace some developers have been fairly effective at serving marketing needs and stuff like that, but not at any substantial rate where software engineers really had to fear for their job. There were always custom things to build. So yeah, I'm worried. Briefly, what do I mean by senior here? Really just two things. You know what you want before the AI writes it. You already have a vision of how you would write this by hand and have it narrowed to a few reasonable options. You can detect it when it gives you bad guidance. Gotcha. You're probably not describing exactly like what a senior developer is in detail. You're just saying in relation to what we're talking about with the LLMs. If you know exactly where you are driving and you know what bad roads look like, then turbochargers can be safe and will get you there faster. If you're not sure where you're driving, activating the turbochargers will get you somewhere fast. This is fair. I think this is a fair assessment. This is one thing I definitely agree with this author on, is AI is going to be used very ineffectively and incorrectly by a lot of people that don't know better. No one will die when your React to-do list doesn't work. This is true. Leave the world behind. So you've made it this far. Congrats. What's going to happen? I don't know. Maybe we'll get really lucky. I mean, I'd be very happy to be wrong here, but change is, I think you're going to be wrong. So I think you're going to be a very happy person. But change is coming. This is true. There will be social and cultural upheaval in tech, just as is happening in the legal profession. And I think just because I make the statement of, the work being done and the work being replaced in the way that you described it in that legal firm doesn't transfer over. It just doesn't. Not like you're describing. Well, you're not really describing how it's going to transfer over and what specific, well, I guess you did kind of describe like what you think is going to be replaced within software engineers, but I think you're like, the adoption is just going to be very different across different industries. And I don't think the replacement in the legal profession is any sort of indicator of what's going to be happening to the software engineering field anytime soon. The models are getting smarter and smarter with each passing month, which means they are going to be eating more and more jobs until they eat the world. All I can tell you is this: get there early. One time Googlers were complaining at TGIF that the parking garage was filling up by mid-morning. Larry Page jokingly suggested maybe you should come earlier. At that moment, he reeked of billionaire. But if you really want to park in the garage, you took his advice. If you want to survive the change, you'd better show up prepared and stay on top of it. The rest of this post is just some direct and simple timeless advice for junior and aspiring software engineers. I hope it can help get you through this awkward period where our industry collectively figures out what exactly the hell is happening. And we'll go through that too. What do you mean by get on top of it, right? Get there early. What does this mean? Does this mean learn prompt engineering? I'll use that term just to satisfy some people. Does that mean to learn how to build prompts early? Does that mean how to use AI to speed up your workflow early? If that's the case, I think that's a recipe for creating really bad software engineers. I think this is awful advice without more context. I think what you can do as a junior developer to effectively use AI and start integrating it early is use it as a mentor. It should be solving your problems, but literally prompt it to kind of be a bit of a mentor that you are pair programming with, or kind of creates this description of like, hey, can you give me a couple challenges, and then I'm going to do these challenges, and based off of my solutions and any gaps in my knowledge, can you create a description of like how a promise actually works so I can better understand it, right? And then you maybe don't understand that very well. It's like, I don't understand this very well. I'm confused by this part. Like, why wouldn't it do this, right? And then you give it that prompt, and then it spits back more mentorship advice. Like, that's a very effective way for a junior developer to use it for mentorship purposes. And you can use, there are a variety of different purposes you can use it for. As a mid to senior developer, and I've talked to people that have constantly complained about this, that are seeing other engineers get really bad at their job. There are mid to senior developers that are just becoming way, way too dependent on AI to be able to spit out solutions. And yeah, temporarily they're getting their company to, they might be shipping out features a little bit faster with that. And I don't think it's 10x, but shipping it out a little bit faster. And then what happens when they get laid off or fired from that company? Or the project drastically changes, they move teams, if it's a larger company. Like, what happens when they can no longer lean on that AI heavily? You got to keep in mind, like, there is a distrust for AI, especially with sensitive information. There is a low adoption rate with many, many companies with utilizing AI and bringing it into engineers. And a lot of senior engineers are quite tired of the shitty code that AI is generating. You can get it to where AI advances so much that it will replace all junior developers, but there had been like a period of like a year where it generated so much shitty code that a senior developer or a CTO will literally fire you for going against that boundary that they set to not bring in AI to your workflow because they have seen way too much shitty code and they're just done with it. There's more that's involved with that adoption, and you need an industry-wide adoption for this to be significant. You are not going to get this in the dev world, and you are starting to see more and more pushback. And you got to realize a lot of CTOs and a lot of good software engineering managers who have experience in software engineering have so much respect for the traditional software engineer and how they grew up and how they grew into their and got more skilled as a software engineer. And you know, a lot of senior developers, for good reason, don't respect people always trying to take the easy way out and push something and not fully understand it. That has always caused problems. So there's this huge lack of adoption that I feel like it's just, you're getting more and more resistance to AI, and it's going to be like, obviously AI is going to be way more effective at solving dev problems than a lot of low code solutions, where it's going to be way more flexible and it's going to be able to be utilized more. But the resistance is extremely high for this. And I do not see companies adopting this long term. What's going to happen is like companies are going to try to adopt this a little bit more frequently. It's going to create a lot of bad code, a lot of headaches, and a lot of problems over the years. And then it's going to shift, and where, you know, AI is going to be banned on engineering teams. And then, you know, we get to like closer to 10 years, it might start coming back way more significantly with the advancements that it has made. But even just the resistance that is happening will shut this down. That's what I think. So it's not just about its capability 5 years from now. There are way more variables that you need to consider before you could ever say that this is like, or ever send the message that this is progressively creeping into so many companies and it's going to replace a junior developer. This is not the case. This is not happening. So, all right, we're going to get into some of the advice and we'll check that out because that's what we do. Let me just catch up a little bit. I think the main problem with AI is that it pushed onto people. During my last Windows update, it asked if I wanted to install Copilot. I said no. Still ended up on my, oh my God, that's a whole conversation about Windows, Mel. Listen, you know, I'm in the Apple world. I am a cult, I wouldn't say I'm a cult member of the Apple world, but I love Apple. I have a lot of Apple products, and I am not happy about them introducing it into the operating system. I can't even make fun of you Windows users. I can't, because we are getting bent over and we are just forced to take whatever Apple gives us. We are fucked. Honestly, I think it's just time that everyone moves to their favorite Linux distro, and I think we're all going to be a lot happier. What do you guys think about that? I let a website builder ad play to pay Don. Thank you, Northern Chimp. I appreciate that. I turned on like conservative ads where it's like just a few. I wanted to see. Hopefully it's not too prevalent. But hopefully I think YouTube pushes it out to more people. I'm testing that. NVIDIA is laughing all the way to the bank with all this. Oh, yeah? Why do you say that? I mean, with just like hyperbolic articles like this? It's a promotion or... all right, so I don't know why everyone is so stressed out. Isn't Apple the most uptight company with their security? I'm sure they'll do it right. I don't think it's their security that people are concerned about. I think it's distrust with Apple that people... Apple has... this is a whole other conversation, and people can leave comments about it and share their stories, and we can go into it another time. But Apple is well known for shoving a lot of things down users' throats that we never wanted, and controlling different ecosystems, and just having like a huge market share on certain things, and locking and kind of like Basically, they create a huge vendor lock-in because so many people depend on their apps, and it's been so widely adopted, where then they start making changes that no one wanted. And like even they've had issues with, I think they dealt with illegal issues with dominating certain markets, and even their certain policies that they've implemented in certain market stores that have prevented developers and people from, especially like new developers that are building mobile Apple apps, from earning the revenue that they do deserve. And there are certain restrictions that are just basically shutting off people's options, and you have to basically do it the Apple way. You have to accept the terms that they implement to block certain content, to block certain apps, to use their software and only the way that they want to use it. They just have control of everything. Users don't trust them. Users use Apple because they create beautiful software and beautiful, they just create like very efficient machines that uses the hardware very effectively. And it's hard because so many people are just, they're locked in. It's just a vendor lock-in where my entire life, my entire workflow is set up through an Apple workflow, and I can't afford to change it. It's too much of a hassle to change it. Apple just will shove anything down your throat and you are forced to deal with it. It's not that Apple lacks security. It's that the problem is that people just don't trust Apple. Rightfully so. That's the problem. All right, let's go into the advice. Get good fast. That's what you need to do. Go ahead, get ahead of the slackers while our industry turns upside down, and you might be the one to... No, don't get good fast. No, get good slow. Everyone trying to get good fast is not getting good. You are take the time to go through fundamentals and build a lot to reinforce it. No, that's terrible advice. You are competing with students from Waterloo who have 2+ years of actual work experience by the time they graduate with a bachelor's in CS. You're also competing with the top 10% of all CS grads nationwide who are year after year already effectively senior. You're not competing with these people as a junior developer. No, despite this being their first real job. You have to realize, like, this is where we need numbers. We need numbers because how many people encompass 10% of all, like the top 10% of all CS grads nationwide getting jobs, and how many available dev jobs are there? These are just, like, none of this article is backed up by any meaningful data. That's the problem with articles like this. It's like when you get layoffs, right? You get someone that's hyperbolic, and they're like, you've probably seen articles like this. Hold on, I got a cough. Not articles, but like even Reddit posts. You'll find this a lot on Reddit. I have 14 years of professional experience and I cannot find a developer job. And so what do junior developers immediately think? Oh, shit. I'm competing with this one person that has 14 years of experience. Why would I not get the job over him? One, there's a lot of red flags in the original statement to begin with. That person with 14 years of experience, probably, like, if they are on Reddit sharing this and just fear-mongering on Reddit and still not able to get a job, they probably are one of those developers that just never developed their soft skills and eventually got pushed out of the company because no one wanted to deal with them and they no longer had to, right? There are a lot of old school developers, a lot of experienced developers that do not have the soft skills that companies want nowadays. But it's like even people that are getting laid off, you hear about, like, oh, these engineers got laid off at Twitter, they got laid off at Facebook, etc. They're not aiming for a lot of your jobs. And there might be a few that are aiming for some of your jobs, but at scale, you are not competing with all of these developers with like 3 to 5 to 7 years of experience. Just like the number of CS grads that are not getting positions, that you got to keep in mind, there are holes in their knowledge. They're aiming for a lot of the web dev jobs when they have no web dev knowledge, right? They're aiming for front-end roles when they haven't even, they're not comfortable with JavaScript. They're not comfortable with CSS. They're not comfortable with React. They've been built extensively and gotten themselves involved in building marketable skills with things that they need to hit the ground running. There's so much nuance to all of this. And you get these hyperbolic statements that are just, quite frankly, irresponsible. Like they're just not true. They're not accurate. These are stupid statements. This author knows that he's being hyperbolic with this, right? By not providing this extra context or diving into the nuance or providing any meaningful data. This is just fear-mongering for the sake of fear-mongering. This is a really stupid statement. And I'm sure the author knows that this is a really, really, really stupid statement. Here are some shotgun recommendations. Do with them as you see fit. Gain experience anywhere and any way you can before you even leave school. Get work experience, contribute to OSS, program on the side. And this is true. Get work experience if you can. Internships are great, especially if you're going through a CS degree. But again, you can build websites for companies. You could take initiative and start building and working on meaningful projects. You can volunteer and build stuff for nonprofit organizations. There are a lot of opportunities that you can actually get professional experience. Contribute to open source. Again, this is generic shit that no, you don't like. Should not be a generic strategy that you just implement. This is a bad piece of advice. And this is where a lot of people just keep like contributing to like they make like one or two open source contributions. You shouldn't just contribute to open source to stand out. You should contribute to open source because you use a developer tool, you care about the developer tool, and you want to give back. That is going to be a respectful thing that is going to create a useful and valuable conversation that is going to make you look better in the interview. Doing one or two contributions just to say you contributed to open source is just a waste of your time. You're not going to be dealing with any complex problems here. You have to dive deep into that open source project, get comfortable with how things are done with it, just like any other complicated code base. So again, no nuance with this. Terrible advice. Program on the side. This is true. Build stuff on the side. CS grads should be doing this. Take your classes seriously. Learn more that is required for passing each class. So it sounds like they're just not really giving advice for alternative education developers, but that's fine. Learn each subject thoroughly and revisit them as you go. Don't over-index on programming language arcana. That's becoming a detail that machines handle. Focus on algorithms, data structure, software design, and engineering, discrete math, operating. What the fuck? No. Operating systems compilers. So this is where... Jesus. This is the type of generic advice that you hear about from... This is not a web developer. This is not a person that knows anything about web development. This is terrible generic advice that would apply... this is not going to apply to a lot of different programming positions. You need to dig into the types of problems that you're solving and what those expectations are, specifically for the programming job that you're going into. This is a CS degree mindset that is completely broken and is only hurting CS grads. This is a broken mindset to have, where a more tailored learning path is needed for a lot of CS grads when they finally figure out the type of dev work they actually want to do. Again, this is the generic bullshit that is holding CS grads back. And please do not take this advice seriously if you're going through alternative education. Find walkthroughs online and study them. And of course, ML, grovel up everything you can't know. Understand how things are built. Make sure you know how every system at a computer works. Make sure you have an understanding of how every cloud service you depend on does its job. But how thoroughly? How every system in a computer... No, Jesus. This advice is just getting worse. Read the docs, okay, and then read the design docs, okay? You won't have to write any of it by hand. Yes, you will, but you need, not at a junior level, but you need to develop a senior programmer's sensibilities about how these things... Okay, so if your advice is to get an overall sense of how the entire system works at a basic level, I think you need to illustrate that, because I don't think you're emphasizing that you're kind of just trying to get an overall outline of how an entire, like a full stack application works, right? And how it's organized. You don't even necessarily know how it's organized, but just that entire data flow and like what responsibilities exist where. I feel like this advice is just really bad without that extra nuance. Learn how to use frontier models to check other LLMs models' work. Sign up for multiple services and send your important prompts to it. Have them evaluate each other's responses. We've lost them. We've lost the author. LLMs are better at reviewing and critiquing your own content than they are at producing it. This is true, but you are not becoming a prompt engineer. You are not diving this deep into LLMs. This is not even a high... There's probably a high skill cap with this, but there is a very shallow learning curve. Jesus, no. Not as a developer. That's not what you should be doing. Another one of the key things that differentiates a senior developer from a junior one in many contexts is operations experience. Read the O'Reilly Google SRE book, read it cover to cover, and find a good GitOps book too. Seem to be quite a few to choose from. There may be no compression algorithm for experience, but fortunately a lot of that experience has been condensed and distilled. Go drink it up. No, you should. No. There's no talk about how to integrate any of this learning with problems that you're actually solving or real project work. Lean hard on a coding assistant like coding. No. Stay at the bleeding edge of features. A coding assistant is a powerful tool like an ID. I'm going to stop. We're just going to read the rest of it because this is just starting to trigger me. This is so incredibly wrong and bad advice. I'm just going to get through it and then we're going to talk. A coding assistant is a powerful tool like an IDE, and learning to master it will level you up as a programmer. Chop involves a lot of manual context shoveling to craft your prompt. Cody does 90% of that shoveling for you, as well as copying the responses back into your code. Most devs using chat still use RawGPT for coding, even though it doesn't help you with context fetching or data shoveling, and it's great all by itself, though more manual work and prompt crafting. I've been using GPT directly in Emacs with the excellent ChatGPT shell because I'm still building coding for Emacs, so I can't use it yet. RawGPT 4.0 is still great. I used to tell people to master an IDE, and even better, also Emacs or NeoVim, but I'm not sure anymore. That might become obsolete soon. Why? Wait until the coding assistants can do it for you. It won't be long or even come help. It doesn't matter what approach you take as long as you start making heavy use of chat and programming, because that, friendo, is how it works now. Hold on. I just need a second. Okay, I'm good. Like it or not, and you need to survive, good luck to you. I will start a channel soon dedicated to showing the new way of programming as I help build Cody. Okay, Cody using chop style coding. I will use both ChatGPT directly and Cody, and they will help me build Cody. Stay tuned. I will also be giving a talk that touches on it. Okay, so there's some bias with this. And much more in August at the Enterprise Technology Leadership Summit in Las Vegas. Hope to see you there. P.S. Thanks to Chris, Gene, Dominic, Anna for their thorough reviews and great suggestions. This person has lost it. This author wants this to be the case. This is not an author that is trying to empathize with developers that are trying to lose their jobs or anything like that. Maybe he's trying to empathize a little bit, but this author wants this to be the case. And I am fully convinced of that. And you're not going to convince me outside of this. This author wants this new style of AI driven programming to be a real thing. And it's effective to really be as hyperbolic as you possibly can and provide as little data as possible to showcase that this is a pattern that is moving forward. So I think the intentions here are kind of disgusting, to be honest. I was almost a little bit more open to this author just being a little bit ignorant, but I think there's actually an ill intent with this to just heavily convince people and push AI because of the direction that this author wants this industry to move in. I think this is actually pretty disgusting. So I was for this article and I thought it was interesting up until that point, but I'm not going to reiterate everything that I talked about because I think I'm just going to be repeating myself. So if you want, you can go back through this. I don't think this pattern is emerging or taking over anytime soon in the programming world. And a lot of this advice, especially with the advice around diving deep into AI, and leaning on that heavily in coding assistance, leaning on that heavily into your workflow to basically be this like supercharged developer that's pushing out code, because if you aren't, you're going to fall behind and everyone else is going to replace you. And like, this is just a horrible take that is filled with ignorance and a lack of data to support it. And yeah, that's it. I've lost my voice. I don't know. What do you guys think about it? We'll chill for like 10 minutes. Here, we'll go full screen. Might as well. Ba-ba-ba. I heard the developer experience for Apple platforms being praised as well. Okay. My OS class completely leveled up my dev skills, mostly because it was my first intro to multi-threading in C. And I think it depends. Like, if you're going to be working, I think it could be helpful to go through a lower level language. And I get the frustrations of developers that have done that, and then people like just jump at a JavaScript and they kind of get into the programming world through something that kind of abstracts a lot of that away, where you kind of just pigeonhole yourself into a certain language or just sticking with the front end, because you haven't really learned different ways of doing things, that different languages, different stacks are going to, where the convention is just going to be completely different. But I think it's incredibly important to know what kind of problems you want to solve. Like, it's okay to get some exposure to it, but like, if you're aiming for front-end development, I don't think diving into an operating systems class is going to be beneficial for you. I just don't. And like, you are just highly focused on becoming like an awesome front-end developer. It's just not. There's so you could dive back into some of that, you could dive back into lower level languages, and you could dive into networking. You can dive into things that are almost irrelevant for front-end positions later down the road, and get a all-rounded foundation and start solidifying that base a little bit more. But I think a lot of people diving into that way too early, like, this is just a very CS grad or CS grad centric mindset that I think is actually failing CS grads at the moment. And they're trying to apply for a lot of positions where for example, there are a lot of CS grads trying to apply for front end positions and just getting turned down because they haven't really learned what they need to. And they haven't, some haven't really taken advantage of getting internship experience, but CS grads are having a hard time now because companies want to hire people that hit the ground running. And I think, going through an operating systems class, especially as a non-CS grad or student, and going through that when you want to focus on front-end development doesn't make sense, which is why you need to figure out like what kind of problems you want to solve. And there's a route for that. And I think this generic feedback of like some of these obscure foundational courses are not going to be an effective use of your time. Love this trolling review channel. Love this trolling review channel. What do you mean by that? All right. That's all the thoughts I have for this. There's long 2 articles. By the way, if you guys have any web dev questions, anything like that, we are going to focus on doing a Q&A tomorrow. We're going to do that at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. So if you have questions about, career questions or questions about becoming a developer in this market, like, we'll dive into it then. But anyways, I'll go ahead and end it here. And if anyone's watching this afterwards, feel free to leave your comments if you agree, disagree. I'm curious, like, what you think about both articles, and I will leave the links to both articles in the video description. And that's all I have for you. I'll see you next time. Take care.